I'd like to introduce our next group up. Siri Brown's going to introduce them. So once you come on up, Vice Chancellor Siri Brown. And we need the next slide set up.
Good morning. Okay, thank you. Oh, I'm in here all by myself. Good morning. I hope everyone is really excited about this fall, this academic year, and that faculty had a great summer. And there's a lot of great work to do. And I remember when I was new over a decade ago, and as a faculty, in my suite of offices, there were faculty from communications and anthropology and ethnic studies and history, and they were so dedicated. We would have conversations all the time about teaching and learning and students and sharing ideas and have these intellectual conversations. And I was struck really early on in being in Peralta with how much dedication there is to our students, how much dedication there is to high quality teaching and learning. And I think that that potential that we have, that reality and gift that we have, is something we can build upon and grow. Watching the math faculty and listening to them up here, and I've been to some of the district-wide meetings that they have, is really a standard of best practice. Can we give them another round of applause? That is just like exactly, perfectly what we want to do, you know, across disciplines and across personalities to focus on teaching and learning in students. Our students are coming to us, they're registering, they're getting ready, they're coming to us hoping for, you know, high quality education. They're hoping to get caring, welcoming introductions to our campus or reintroductions to our campus. They're hoping that we come with innovation and smiles and positivity and the belief that they can achieve what it is that they want to achieve, that the reason why they're here. They're coming to us with what the great Aretha Franklin, R.I.P., said, R-E-S-P-E-C-T. They want our respect. I'm about to give you all my money. Can I get a little respect? Is what she said, and that's what our students are saying too. So today we have another example of great faculty doing great things, and I want to tell you that you notice probably a difference in the district flex. There's no guest speaker, that the speakers are our own specialists, our own guest speakers. And so I want to just take one moment to thank Scott Hoshida for organizing this and thinking about putting Flex Day together differently and focusing on faculty and focusing on students and teachers, which we have so many experts. So non-credit is the next example of what's happening here in our district with our amazing faculty who have taken this initiative to build a pilot project in the Fruitvale Center with child development in ESL. So I just have a couple of slides to talk about non-credit. And non-credit is an educational gateway. It's a portal to the future. It empowers learning, literacy, and access to higher education. And it's free. It's at no cost to students. No fees, no tuition. Non-credit is defined in the Ed Code as well, and today the focus is on CDCP non-credit categories, which stands for Career Development and College Preparation. You'll hear that a lot, the CDCP. People also call it the Enhanced Non-Credit. And the reason why it's called enhanced is that non-credit has existed for a long time, but the state recently said, we will give you full apportionment, you know, the same rate of dollars as for credit classes if you do CDCP non-credit. And so it's defined in the Ed Code and supported by law around improving employability and job placement, college class work, career readiness, completion of degrees, and transfer. And so what this means, in essence, is that the CDCP non-credit is for workforce preparation, short-term vocational, ESOL, basic skills, English, and math. Currently, in the district, we have more and more curriculum coming down the pipeline for non-credit. And if you remember, we really launched sort of a, what is non-credit to the district when it was housed in WDCE, Workforce Development and Continuing Education. And that work in the early year and a half was really around creating the infrastructure. Karen Crowley deserves a lot of credit for that. She really engaged in that process. And Dr. Mel King helped to put together retreats and informational sessions to tell people, hey, non-credit, non-credit. There are other districts who have whole non-credit colleges, who have hundreds of courses. But for us, this is relatively new. And it offers this amazing opportunity to reach students who did not think that they could be students. It offers an opportunity to go deep into our communities and offer an access, a pathway, a road into our colleges for credit. And the example today will really show you what that means and how it has impacted so many lives so quickly. So in the spring of 2018, non-credit was moved to academic affairs, and we formed a working group comprised of faculty, staff, and administration. And I love this working group. We've been having these dynamic meetings, just throwing everything on the wall, looking at non-credit. And so out of that, we are going to present to Share Governance a non-credit working plan. We have updated the website, which is on the flyer, with all kinds of information about non-credit so that people can be really clear on what non-credit is and what we offer. It's also translated into Spanish. And that was recently done by Juan Carlos at the district for us. And there's district-wide coordination. Each campus will have a non-credit lead person that will know everything about it so that if you have questions, you can ask. And importantly, we also are going on an information campaign because we think there's still a lot of misinformation about what non-credit is and how do I make a class and how do I do this. And so hopefully you received a flyer today about it that gives the basics, the foundation of what non-credit is, so that you can begin to think about, how would I do this? How will I engage in non-credit? What kind of certificate could I develop in partnership or within my department? And this year, we really want to give incentive to faculty to develop certificates of non-credit, the CDCP certificates. So within this academic year, any faculty in working with their chair and their dean and their VPI and develop a non-credit certificate through CIC, once it's passed to CIPD, they can receive a $500 stipend for that work. No round of applause on that one? $500? That's a little bit something. I'm hoping that we get at least 10, but it would be wonderful if we got 20 faculty to engage in this. But remember that it has to be CIPD approved and to work with your chair and your administration to make sure that it is a CDCP certificate and you know exactly how to do it, how to build that class. So without any delay, I want to introduce you to two faculty who engaged very early on in non-credit and created a child development ESL non-credit certificate. And I remember being at Merit and the conversations and the talk and all the work that they were doing around this, the curricular work as well as what they were doing in the community to let people know, hey, this is coming and it's free and you can take these courses and get this certificate. And lo and behold, last fall, the pilot project went underway, and they will describe to you the level of success. I can just tell you that there were wait lists and wait lists and wait lists. This was highly successful and a beautiful project that they now are growing and continuing. So I hope that it serves to inspire you to think about non-credit and that you engage in building non-credit certificates to reach the students who think they cannot be students, but who we know can be students and can achieve competency and completion and come on to our campuses from non-credit to credit. Please welcome and give a round of applause to two amazing dedicated faculty, Elizabeth and Jennifer.
Thank you, Siri. I'm Beth Marr, ESOL at Laney and Merritt, and I go by she, her.
And I'm Jennifer Briffa, full-time faculty in child development at Merritt, and I also go by she and her. That's it. Yeah. But thank you for that introduction, Siri. So let's see if we can get the slide.
What is it?
Should be the next. It's the up button.
Oh, nope, other way. Nope, that's that. There.
There you go.
Okay.
So I've, spent many years working with little children. I'm in early childhood education, and when you've been sitting this long, you would have already a little minor riot if you all were preschoolers. So I'd like to start with just getting you to move a little bit. With our child development and our program that we'll tell you about in a minute, we did use a lot of hands-on activities, songs, games, movements to get the students both learning about child development content and learning English. So we're going to do a song, and if you want to move your bodies a little, that's fine too. And this would be a song we do a lot in preschool when you get there in the morning. And we're going to practice a little Spanish-English, okay? So it's the Buenos Dias song. I think some of you might know it. So it's a call and response. We're going to do it once in English and then once in Spanish, okay? So Beth, you're going to help me, right? Okay. So good morning. How are you? Very well, thank you. And you? Buenos días. ¿Cómo estás? Muy bien, gracias. ¿Y tú? Great. Give yourself a round of applause. Wonderful. Okay, so you go to the next slide. I want you to look at this photo. Is that too loud? I tend to be loud. And I want to ask you, what do you think these students are doing? Anyone shout out something. What do you think they're doing? They look like they're playing? All right. What else? Matching game, group work. Anything else? Waiting for drinks. Yeah. Yeah, they do look like those little drink thingies. Yes. How? And one last one. Having fun. Awesome. Yeah. And also, so what is one challenge you think they might face? What is just, it's kind of out there, but what do you think one challenge these students might be facing? What's that? Language skills or language challenge? What else? Not using a textbook? Okay. Textbooks can be difficult, and that was one of our challenges, was finding an appropriate textbook to use, and I think Beth will talk a little bit about that. Okay, so in the interest of making sure we have enough time, these students are learning about child development. They are playing some games here. They're using manipulatives that you would use with children if you work with children, but they're really good teaching tools. They're learning English because we use these kinds of activities and tools in both the child development class and in the ESOL class. They're learning about college life because that was part of our goal with this program that we'll introduce, is to learn what does it mean to be in college. And they're also learning about each other in different cultures. So even though the majority of our students that came to our first pilot enrollment were Latinas or Latinx, we did have other nationalities, ethnicities, and cultures represented also, so they were learning about that. Okay, I'm going to give you a little history of how we got to our non-credit pilot program in child development / ESOL. I have been teaching classes at Merritt at Fruitvale, that's what it's called now, 1900 Fruitvale Avenue, for a long, long time. I don't even remember, maybe more than 10 years. And part of the work there was to support Merritt being in the community and working in the community, especially, of course, the Latino community. And one of the needs that we identified very early was the need for non-credit ESL. At that time, that's what we called it, because many of the people in the community did not have access to low-cost or no-cost ESL, and many of them were also undocumented. And so for them to come to Laney or Merritt or any of the Peralta colleges for their ESL was very expensive, and for some it wasn't even an option. So when we started, we did a lot of advocacy work there at Fruitvale, but one of the things we wanted to do was to figure out how can we work on non-credit ESL, especially at Fruitvale. And when the enhanced model came out, we realized this was an opportunity. And then knowing that you had to create a program that led to certificates, we decided to look around for a discipline that we could tie with the ESOL. And since I was at all the tables, and since child development was already teaching classes at the Fruitvale, it made sense to pick child development as the CE program to pair with. And so there was a lot of work done at that point. I won't even try to mention names of everyone involved, but eventually we did form this small working group that was the two of us, Beth and I, and Lisa Cook, which I don't know if she's still here, but we definitely want to acknowledge her. With some funding, we were able to design the program over at least 2 years. And eventually, we launched the program in fall of 2017. So the urgent need for the non-credit ESL, but also in terms of my content area, child development, or what's called more familiar is early childhood education. There was a need to help students who were not ready for credit classes, but who were already working in the field as what we call friends, family, and neighbors providers. So these are people providing care very informally for children. It could be your family members, your neighbors, or nannies, babysitters. And they needed training too, and they needed to see the possibilities of going to college and getting the classes and certificates they needed to be successful in the workforce. And so we decided to develop this program specifically targeting that group. It made all the sense because the need was great for that entry point. Okay, so we go to the next slide. What happened to the pathways slide? Oh, sorry. Yeah. Okay, so this is one of the tools that we used for educating our, people about our program, and also as a visual. This is our child development pathways map for our department. And where you see the blue arrow, that's where we are, the non-credit program. That's the entry point. So this path, this map, shows all the different entry points and exit points for our department and our programs. And we added our non-credit pilot up at the top. And one of the things about this is that it also helps students see that where the pathways might be for them, even though they're coming in at this level that we were calling before college. So while this pathway map is very, it's clear what we see there, it can be really confusing to our students. And so we've also felt in our department and in our pilot program that it was crucial to support our students. And so we make use of counselors that are versed in child development and who know the programs. We use professional advisors in the department who know also the permit system, because a lot of these, the blue ones are the permits that you have to get to work with children, and so it's very confusing to students. So we have professional advisors that can help them navigate that. And we also use embedded tutors who are familiar with both ESOL and child development content. And also, of course, faculty like ourselves and also coordinators. Faculty were willing to step in and be coordinators for these programs. So even though this looks daunting to a student, it was very well supported in collaboration with many different people to help support our students through these pathways. Okay, this slide shows the model that we came up with. So just briefly, the model intends to accomplish at least 3 things, and maybe Beth, if there's something else too. So of course, one of our goals was to increase the language skills in contextualized ESOL classes. And that's really key. I would have liked to hear more about that with the math group, because we know that contextualized instruction, no matter what, is more powerful. And we've tried that in child development with math and English, and this was contextualized ESOL. So one of the goals was to further their language skills, their English language skills, and contextualize courses. The other was to introduce students to child development concepts and content and skills. And we chose 2 areas to do that in that fit with this, the targeted group of nannies, babysitters, family care providers. So we taught infant toddler care content in the first couple classes, and then we taught preschool content in the second 2, because these are the skills students are looking for. And so that was a second goal. And I think for me, a third goal also was to introduce students to what does it mean to be a Peralta Community College student. What does it mean to meet the expectations, coming on time, trying to come consistently. We provided some things to help them feel successful, like materials, books, pencils, things like that, binders, textbooks, also notebooks, things like that. But in addition, we also brought in people to make presentations to them. We had a counselor come in and talk what's counseling about, what does it mean to get an SEP. We had our professional advisors come in and talk about the permit system in child development, where they fit in there. And so we felt, both Beth and I as the faculty, that was part of our job, was to help them kind of figure out this college thing. So that was, I think, another goal. And in addition, our non-credit program offers students who complete all the courses at a satisfactory level 2 certificates. And these certificates, while they are not, they're not, how do I say it? Industry recognized through the permit system of the state of California, they do provide something really wonderful. Students feel really great getting them. Our students were so happy to get them, and we had a little mini celebratory event at the end of each two-course sequence. And they can also use them to, when they go for job interviews, or let's say there's a family who wants to hire them as a nanny, they could show them their certificate and said, I did this coursework, which is very powerful for our students. So the certificates are definitely important. Okay. So some of our outcomes from our, these are some of our numbers. These numbers reflect a fairly good success rate in relation to certificate completion, but they do not necessarily reflect what those students who did not complete the whole certificate program got out of the classes. Because there were students who came, they were amazing. They came every week on time, they worked hard, they were excited. But then some students had different challenges, and they may have skipped some classes, and because it is non-credit, they're not held to the same attendance standards. So these reflect certificate completion numbers for the fall and then for the spring. So we've completed a full year. But they don't necessarily reflect what those students who did not complete the whole certificate got out of the class. So I think we felt, and I know I really thought this, even if they came to a few of the classes, they were walking away every time with something. If it was not a little more English or some child development concept or some fun activity they had learned to use with their kids that they work with, there was some takeaway, even if they only came to some of them. But our enrollment was really high, as Siri mentioned. We had waiting lists, and so I thought that was successful. Okay, and I do want to say that even though they were not, they didn't all get certificates, they can repeat these courses and then get a certificate. So if, let's say, they did one of them but didn't quite finish the other one satisfactorily, they can just take the other one and then get the certificate. So there is that a feature of non-credit that is helpful to some students. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to pass it over to Beth now. Thank you.
Hi, so I'm going to repeat some of what Jenny said, but just to highlight, can you hear me? Why we felt, it was just to say from the outset, it was just a super, I was so happy to go to work every night. The students came so ready to learn, and the class was robust and full. We had about 30 to 35 students on a daily basis, which matters in non-credit. It's a daily positive attendance. So it was just a super wonderful work environment and just a great class to be part of, and I felt really lucky. But I wanted to highlight some of the key things that made it so successful, and I think, number one, that it was non-credit. If we had made this credit, it just would have, it wouldn't have served the population in the way that this did, and being non-credit, first off, there's a non-credit application, which is different than the CCC Apply, and and it's 2 pages, and it doesn't ask for your social security number. So that alone just lowered the stress for a lot of students, and it just made it more accessible. Also, that it was free. A lot of our students have documentation issues, so they get categorized as out of state, so they would have to pay much higher fees for credit, and so it being free just made it a wide open door, and they came. That it's repeatable. Non-credit is, you can repeat it, I don't know what's in the syllabus, in the course outline, but it's like 20 times you could take it if you need to, because we know life gets in the way and you may have to stop and come back, and so you can take it as many times as you need. It's focused on skills attainment. It's not focused on grades or units. And so it just makes a low stakes entry into our college system, which worked. We saw it really worked for students. They came with a lot of anxiety about, in my class particularly, about English, and they stayed, and many of them went on. Let's see. Oh, also, it's short term. Non-credit has different regulations about what's the minimum amount you can teach, and so we decided to make it 8 weeks instead of 17 and a half weeks, because 17 and a half weeks is a long time to commit to something you're not sure about. But 8 weeks is much more like, I can do that. And so, and also with the positive daily attendance, it allowed us at 8 weeks to sort of open it up. If people were no-show, we could open it up and get new students to come in. So there were 4 points of entry in the year as opposed to 2, which was worked really well for our population. There's Jenny teaching. A couple other things that were really key. We had great administrative support from the beginning, starting 3 years ago, when we started writing the curriculum and working together. There were curriculum chairs at Merit who we were like, okay, let's see what non-credit is about. And we all jumped in, and we were hours on the phone working out the course outlines and how to get it through the committees to the state, and that was super helpful. The key also was at the Fruitvale Center, which is in the community, which is another key part of this program. There's a site coordinator there, Brenda, who speaks Spanish, is deeply embedded in the community, goes to the churches, goes to the schools, did all the outreach. I think she single-handedly walked every single student through that application, one by one. I don't know how we would have done the program without her. And all of this was supported by Dean Vasconcelos up at Merit. She was really a big promoter and supporter of the program from the beginning, and funded a lot of the coordination work that we had to do. And in fact, she funded Jenny to be the project coordinator, which was also really key. There's a lot of moving parts in a program like this. Like, it's not just one non-credit class, it's a whole program. And we had to coordinate with the district, and they were rolling out all the new processes and procedures for the first time too, so there was a lot of support that it needed. The contextualized English was, I just want to make another note about that. From the students' point of view, I think there were students who came for the ECE content, and then they were really happy to get the English content. And then there were students who came for the English content and were like, oh, this is a pathway. So having the two together really worked for a lot of students. From my point of view, I've tried to do contextualized English before, and we see the numbers, if you read the research, it's really effective, but teachers are rarely given the time to implement it correctly. And so with this program and with the support we got from Merit, I was able to, we met for 2 years before the classes started. We planned our course outlines together. We planned our lesson plans together when we got to that point. I sat in Jenny's class for the entire first semester, just absorbing. I'm not an early childhood educator. I'm an ESL teacher. I have children, but it's not the same thing. So I sat in Jenny's class and I got to absorb all the language and the concepts, and I maybe picked up a little Spanish because the class is bilingual. I don't know if we mentioned that, but Jenny does her class completely bilingually in English and in Spanish. And I will say that in terms of they were talking about math phobia, there's a lot of English phobia too. And so the bilingual piece was really important because there were students in the class who really struggled to say one word in English. And that we were contextualized and that we were so obviously a team really helped bring down that anxiety for those students. And just last, what everybody's been saying today, it was a team. We were so completely a team. It was Jenny and I working on curriculum, Jenny and I and Brenda and Karen Crawley working on processes and procedures and outreach. And I think the students really felt that. There was this feeling, just like the math folks were saying, that the students were like, we're getting all this attention. We're getting, all these people care about us getting through and getting the content. And that was really, really, I think, a big part of why it was so successful. Just to show, there they are. Some of the students who got their certificates walked in the ceremony in May, and that was super exciting. Even students who didn't get the certificate came and watched and supported them. It was very much of a big family by the end. And I will say that about 5 to 10 of the students who finished each semester, which is where they get the certificate after 2 course sequences, about 5 to 10 of them did go on to the credit bilingual program at Fruitvale, which was just what we wanted. That's a bridge program. They also, lots of them came over to Laney for the summer non-credit that we were offering here and the credit. So it really did serve as a bridge for students to get into our system and get into the credit programs that can carry them forward. Okay? I want to talk about some of the challenges.
Okay, so of course with any pilot program, and especially when we were like, I know BCC did something too the same semester, so I don't want to say we were the only one, but with this launch as a pilot, there are going to be challenges, and there continue to be challenges, some of which are listed here. So infrastructure, the district is definitely working on it, as Siri laid out. I'm so happy with the way it's more structured and there's a plan. I do have to, give lots of kudos, and Beth too says to Karen Crawley, because she really was very responsive when we were sending her enrollment forms, even scanning them and sending them in to get students in at the last minute, if there were errors in names or anything like that, and then when the certificates too. But that was interesting for us to work with, the enrollment, the fact that some students could turn in enrollment forms at the colleges, but we didn't feel sure what was happening with those enrollment forms at first, because things tend to sit on people's desks sometimes in A&R because they're overwhelmed. And so I think that needs to be very streamlined and clear for any future non-credit programs, just the enrollment process. The certificates, I know that one of the things that I'd like to work on this time around, because we're starting again with the next cohort, is to see if there's a way we can work with counseling and A&R to have the certificates also be, given out at graduation like other certificates are. That wasn't formalized. And also I know that there's a work in place for a non-credit transcript, because right now I don't believe that's in place yet. I don't know if that's correct, Siri, but I believe that's true. Because students do want to get a transcript of their non-credit work also. So that's a challenge, just kind of those enrollment issues and more infrastructure issues. This idea of positive daily attendance can be a challenge. I know in us figuring out our hours, this is the first time I ever taught a positive daily attendance course. Usually you just, do your grades, and that was a little challenging. So I think I'll read something that Beth wrote here. You know, positive daily attendance means you need to have 25 students in class every day. So how many do you allow into your class to maintain that average? Those were some questions, you know, we had. And so I think giving support to faculty about positive daily attendance. Outreach wasn't a big issue for us, but because we had the support. Like she mentioned Brenda Mora at the Fruitvale, but we also have a really good outreach system in place for child development. We have 500 providers we send things to. So we just do, you know, flashes of mails and phone calls and texts. So it wasn't hard to fill our classes, but I think outreach can be a challenge for some other programs. And then now this is where we're at right now. So sustaining financial support, funding. Because right now, we were able to have funds to order materials for this semester, like books and things, but that's it. And right now, there is not sustained funding for my work as the program coordinator. I will do it, of course, but you know, there's no funding for that right as this moment, or for our collaboration. So I need to work with the two deans to find some funding, because the collaboration piece is critical, and also for our embedded tutors. Our embedded tutors were also a critical part of the program, and so, I guess what I'm saying is we need sustainability of these kinds of programs, especially the support pieces, and so that would be a challenge too. Anything you want to add?
Well, just what's
Oh, yeah, that's right, that's right.
Yeah. So it was really clear from the students that they were really eager and they wanted more. As soon as they heard that we were going to be offering non-credit general ESL here at Laney this summer, we just got flooded with applications from the students we had in the spring. So for that class, that's a non-credit general ESL bridge to credit, and that's being offered at Laney. It was this summer and fall. COA is starting it this fall. Merit's planning to start it in the spring. So that, and the summer ones here, we offered one here on campus. They had to open up a second one, and there were still waiting lists for that. So the need in the community for these non-credit classes is huge. We also have a vocational ESL, so sort of more work-oriented general ESL non-credit that's on the books. It's approved by the state. We're ready to teach. We're hoping to teach it here in the spring at Laney, and it's clonable for any of the other programs. We want to keep supporting the students in this non-credit program to get enrolled into the credit program in ECE at Merit, and we really need the student services support down at the Fruitvale Center. The centers that are happening, the Fruitvale Center in the community is key. And we need the support of student services at the center in the community where the students are. The other thing is we have, so the bilingual credit program, there's a big drop off in students going to the English non-bilingual classes higher up in the sequence where they can get higher level certificates and better wages. And there's a big drop off there. So we're talking about using non-credit to support students to bridge from that bilingual program into the English-only program. And so that's something we're looking forward to. That's it. Any questions? No?
Hello, hello.
I know.
Hi, everyone. So that was a great presentation and very informative to learn about what non-credit and credit looks like. But there was a reference that you just made about how positive and the enrollment was really good and for this pilot program, and that you're looking for additional funding to be able to sustain this, and that's not what's in place right now. But what I find interesting is that we were told that we had an increase of FTESs as a result of summer. And I believe that your numbers are probably a part of that increase, which generated additional funding to the tune of $1.9 million. At least that's what we were told. So I'd be interested in finding out more in the very near future how as a result of your positive FTESs, increased our budget and what that means to support this type of program moving forward. So it was more of a statement than a question, but there's a question embedded in there that I'm hoping to hear how that's going to work out.
I'm hoping to hear how it's going to work out, too.
Oh, there's a question over here.
Hi. Great opportunity to bring students. And my question is, what resources have you found in Peralta for constructing a bridge to credit for a credit program that exists that needs a non-credit analog?
What resources?
How would one go about constructing a non-credit program with a bridge to a credit program? What resources are there in Peralta to help solve that?
Well, that's part of what Siri has been working with on this working group for the spring, is to try to get, there are people around who have done this and are currently building those kinds of programs, and we're trying to sort of standardize that and make it available to everybody in a public space.
And then additionally, you'll be hearing a lot more about non-credit this semester with workshops on campus, with the point persons at your campuses, and anyone's welcome. We welcome you to join the working group, even if you are coming just to learn yourself, because as you can tell from this presentation and the work that these faculty did, it's out there. There's so many students out there who want to come to us, and this is a new vehicle that we really want to explore. Not just because we need FTS, of course that's everything, but it's really because we're about really reaching the nooks and crannies of our community and making sure they know that they're welcome and that it's much easier to come than they might have thought. Then what was shared becomes a reality, that they get engaged, they get this support, they get this learning, and in that there's the opportunity to talk about, okay, now come to credit. So that Beth didn't really have to do anything to bridge them into credit. They already were now redefining themselves as college students, finding out all the resources around financial aid and everything else, so that it becomes even an easy process to bridge. So we welcome working with your area and any other area that fits the CDCP certificates, and we will be finding the funds and working with Merit to make sure that they get the support they need to continue. Obviously, that would happen.
I want to say also that the Chancellor's Office, the statewide Chancellor's Office, has a whole non-credit link, and there's tons of resources there. But also the other really key thing for us, we didn't reinvent the wheel in our 2-year design process. We looked across the state for non-credit, especially child development ESOL programs that already existed. Now, these weren't enhanced at that time, but they were wonderful programs that showed us what we needed to do, and we just copied a lot of what we found. So the resources are also there. I also want to give a kudos and a shout out to our curriculum specialists at each college. I can only really speak to Merit, of course, but the people in the curriculum committee at Merit are learning fast about everything to do with non-credit, and they're great resources. I know at the time, for us, it was Clifton Coleman, and he was really instrumental in holding our hand through a very tedious and hard process of getting it through the state. But now I think the curriculum specialists at all the colleges, they really can be a great resource. And in addition, of course, now there seems to be an incentive, too, for faculty.
Great. We have one last question.
Okay, this is for Siri. A little bit more information about the point person. So it's a faculty point person at each campus. How much time are they working? Are they connected to administration? Is that in the process of being put together?
I asked all the VPIs for who the point person is, and I can't recall off the top of my head right now. So we'll email that out. It's administration and faculty, but I'll make sure that I send an FAS to everyone about who to contact and additional information and links and resources for non-credit.
All right, thank you very much for your presentation. Can we give them a hand? Thank you. All right, can we get to the last slides? Oh, I need to do, we have a last raffle, and then I want to just walk through, but before we do the raffle, let's see, my Google slide should come up. Well, a few takeaways from just a few panels. I think this is the first time we've really had faculty experts come up, and I know they are a little anxious and not exactly sure how to talk about the work, and I really appreciate their, some of the focus, which was really on a couple things. One is that if we are going to do difficult things, that we have to trust each other, and we have to be able to work together. And that only happens when we actually sit down and break bread and spend time together. And that's one of the things that I think that I want this year to be about, is finding that time and that space to do that work so that we can deal with hard problems. You cannot deal with difficult problems if you don't have trust. You cannot deal with difficult problems if you don't take the time.